You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Audrey Fairbrother, the Content Marketing Manager over at EQL. Audrey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. I'm glad we could get you on today. So, Audrey, what is EQL?
Yeah, so EQL is a launch platform. We basically help brands launch their most in-demand products. And there's a couple things that we do differently. So if you've ever had to wait in a queue for a product you want, for example, it could be a pain. If you've ever experienced a site crashing when trying to buy an in-demand product, we solve all that pain. No site crashing, no bots stealing up your inventory. But we also give brands a lot of tools to kind of maximize the moment around their launch. And we work a lot of fairness into the back end so that fans have their best shot at getting the products they want.
Audrey, that's brilliant. So within that, I want to speak a little bit more to product launches. First of all, could you talk to us, what is a limited product launch?
Yeah, so I think most of the time sneakers comes to mind as the most common example. And EQL works with a lot of sneaker brands, but we also work with a lot of artists, a lot of whiskey brands, collectible brands. It's really any product where demand for the product is outweighing supply for the product. There's usually a few things that go into that, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but great craftsmanship is one. Obviously, building a community is another. But I think truly any brand who has built a little bit of passion or community around their product can do limited edition releases. It's a nice sales channel that complements your DTC strategy. So yeah, I mean, the world of limited edition launches, I think, has really expanded from sneakers really starting it all to any product you can imagine.
So Audrey, let's say maybe for the skeptics, what would you say are really the biggest benefits that a brand can get out of doing a limited product launch?
Yeah. So I think traditionally in e-commerce and retail, it's been about the conversion, right? The sale. And that's sort of the ultimate goal. And it's a little bit different with launches. Of course, selling the products is important and getting that revenue is important, and you need those things. But launches are a little bit of a different strategy, and they're really meant to build connection with your fans. EQL's run more than 6,000 launches at this point, and we've really seen that community really start to build around these moments. And that, of course, leads into hopefully long-term customer lifetime value. So it's a bit more of a long-term play, I think, these product launches, but it's a great complement to your regular D2C strategy. And I think brands who are looking to generate a little bit of buzz and a little bit of conversation around their products, get a little bit more attention, build their fan base, which I think is probably every brand or retailer. Launches can be a great way to do that.
Man, that's phenomenal. So we'd love to kind of put you on the spot a little bit here. Can we come up with maybe a less conventional brand that we could use to walk through just a hypothetical limited product launch?
Yes, let's do it. I think everybody thinks of sneakers as the go-to example for limited product launches for good reason. They have done an incredible job of sort of building their storytelling and how it connects to community. But I do believe any product can launch. So let's go with something wild. Let's go with teapots.
I love it. We're keeping it interesting over here. I was a little worried you were going to use sneakers as the go-to example. And I was going to say, that's so boring. Let's come up with something better. Teapots will definitely do it. Let's work with that. In a minute, we'll get into some of the considerations if you have, let's say, a more established teapot brand versus like a newer stage. But let's say high level, I'm running Pat's Tea Shop Incorporated. I sell custom teapots. Let's say that I was working with EQL and I was looking to do a limited product launch. Walk me through high level. What are some of the big steps that are going to go into that launch camp?
Absolutely. Okay. So Pat's Teapots Limited. This is the company.
Let's do it.
I like it. Okay. First of all, if you were coming to EQL, it's hopeful that you'd already have the product in mind that you want to launch. We have a lot of tools to really help you maximize the moments before your launch, during your launch, after your launch. But really, we lean on those brands to sort of have a launch strategy at least in mind as they're coming to us. So let's say you have a teapot. Let's say you're doing a collaboration teapot with a really famous artist who is going to paint one of your teapots and it's pretty exclusive and you don't have many SKUs. So in that case, we would probably advise you to begin building the story, working backwards from the launch date. Tell us about how this collaboration came into existence, why it's important, why your two fandoms really complement each other and why they mesh. How exclusive is this product? You don't have to give away specific inventory numbers, but I do think it's always important to call out that it's a limited edition or an exclusive product or limited inventory is available. People really want a piece of art that nobody else has, and that's part of the passion of it. So probably suggest that you start there.
Let's even maybe backtrack a step before that. Are there general sources of inspiration that you often go to or that you recommend clients go to start ideating what might be a good opportunity for a product launch?
Always smart to look at the greats, right? I mean, we talked about sneakers, but why they've been so successful is because of their storytelling. And I truly believe that. I think it's a quote from the movie Air, if you've seen it, where Michael Jordan's mom says, "A shoe is only a shoe until my son steps into it," which is true of every product, right? If you can tell a story around a product that fans can connect to, there's going to be some passion around that product. So as they're looking, if I was a teapot store and I'm sort of trying to figure out what might stir a little bit of buzz, I'm going to look to some of my communities. So I'm sure there's a tea community on Reddit that you can sort of dive into and understand what else are tea fans talking about or looking to. There's Facebook groups. Even if you don't have a big engaged community, there are communities that you can actually go to understand what these fans are looking for. Then you think about the demographics of your fan base and where there might be crossover. Let's say you are selling teapots to 30 to 45-year-olds and they are huge collectibles fans. What other communities might they be interested in? Are there artists that they might be following? I think wherever there's a crossover of demographics, there's a really nice opportunity for collaboration. That's another place that brands can really look to see where they might find a product or be able to develop a product that they can launch.
So let's say we're getting into the promotion side of things. And I'd love to take a look at maybe a little bit more established of a brand versus call it like that challenger brand that's still early stages, maybe doesn't have the same follower base. What do you think about this? Maybe we take a look at how that strategy and implementation of promotion might differ a little, maybe for a brand with, let's say, between email and social channels, like 100,000 followers versus maybe we say, I don't know, sub 10,000 followers or sub 10,000 email subscribers. How does that sound for a good comparison?
Yeah, let's do it. Who do you want to start with? The bigger brand?
Let's start with 100,000. I suspect that's a little more straightforward. So I have 100,000 followers across social channels and across email subscribers. How should I go about really promoting this upcoming launch?
Yeah, this is a great question. I would caveat it with having 100K somewhat engaged followers for this type of strategy is not going to benefit you as well as having 25K really engaged followers. Again, it's really about generating that passion. So this is great news for all brands, whether you have a really big following or not a very big following, but an engaged following. And I think that's the difference. So if I have 100K, let's say, really engaged followers, because I've done the pre-work of really building that community and connecting with them and staying really engaged with my subscribers or followers, then it's a little bit easier, right? Because you're just kind of outbounding that promotion of the product. A great way to sort of go about it, and something that we've seen brands do, is announcing pretty early. And this really helps to just start the conversation going. It kind of depends on who you're marketing to. So if you're marketing to, let's say, a Gen Z audience, they're online a lot more. They're looking at things a lot more. They're talking online a lot more versus maybe a millennial audience who it takes a little bit more time for that conversation to really start generating. So if I'm announcing early, maybe it's just a tease. Maybe I'm not giving away all the details, but I'm just letting fans know that something's coming, getting them a little bit excited, starting the guessing game internally in the comments. That's a really great way that we've seen brands really start to generate that buzz. And then they'll start to sort of leak details intermittently. So maybe you're giving away a color, or maybe you're saying who the collaboration is with, or maybe you're just showing a little piece of the products, but not the whole thing. again, it's just sort of stirring the pot, getting the buzz going is a great way to do that. If it is a collaboration, whoever you're collaborating with is doing the same and making sure that your marketing efforts are really matching up and the timing of everything is complementary. That's a big piece. We've also seen a lot of brands do seeding their product with influencers. Again, big with sneakers, but you see an NBA star wear these new shoes on the court that you've never seen before, and you want to know what those shoes are. It's the same with maybe jewelry, or let's say you see a celebrity on TV wearing a bracelet, you wonder where that bracelet is. So seeding is a big strategy that we see. Influencer marketing, of course, if there's a big voice or brand in your space that you think could help you get the word out, that's another great way to just start generating that buzz. So that's where I would start as a bigger brand who's sort of leading up to my launch.
Let's say my teapot company, we have a much smaller follower base. We mentioned the idea of 10,000 followers. Maybe we even, if you're comfortable with it, maybe we even skew on the lighter side. Maybe it's 1,000 or 2,000 really engaged followers. How does that launch plan differ? Or do you find it's largely the same in terms of how you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same. So it also depends on your inventory, right? Like, let's say you have 2,000 followers, but you only have 10 of these incredible teapots. That's still a really good demand to supply ratio that you have there. So it's the same if you have 100K really engaged followers, and let's say you have 50,000 pieces of inventory. It's really, in that case, you're sort of comparing apples to apples because the demand is going to outweigh the supply. And in either case, I think if you have a very small following, instead of really doing that outbound approach, maybe it's a little bit more going into you don't have the community built yet, so you can go into other communities that are established. So I think I mentioned Reddit before, but that's a great one. Discord is another really good community space where you can go start talking about your product in places where people are already passionate about that thing. So there's a tea. I mean, I'm sure there is a tea and a teapot, community on Reddit. I would not be surprised. Same with Discord. There's community everywhere on the internet. You have to find the right ones. Start talking about your product, why it's different, why it's special. If there is a specific piece of this product you want to launch that is really important, or there's a great story to tell, start telling that story in those communities. So I'd say if you build the following, just to sort of summarize, say you have a big following built, it's really pushing out. You don't yet, it's really going into these communities where you can start to talk about it.
So that brings up a follow-up question within there, and that is, how do you recommend brands think about what quantity of inventory to release? Obviously, there's going to be some constraints. If you're doing something, let's say I'm getting my teapots painted by a custom artist, maybe it's only feasible to get 10 variants. But what are some of the big questions that you like to ask brands to help them figure out, do we release 10 units, 100 units, or 10,000 units?
Yeah, this is so different. And depending on the retailer, sometimes you only get a certain amount of inventory. Let's say you're doing a collaboration. This is what you have. There's warehousing factors, there's production factors, there's all these things that go into deciding the amount of inventory you might have for a product. So a lot of times it's out of the brand's control. But let's say in this case for the teapot, it is in your control. It's really about trying to gauge demand. And this is something that even the biggest brands in the world struggle with. So it's not an isolated problem. It's a lot of the times, again, just dependent on all these outside factors. But EQL has something really cool that has been able to help a little bit with smaller brands who are trying to gauge demand. And it's called a notify me feature. So basically, you're pushing out what the product's going to be, details about the product, and people can sign up to be notified when that product launches. So great way, obviously, to remind people when your launch is going out, but it's also a great way to gauge demand. So you can see how many people are interested in knowing when your product is going to launch. Then you can look at, okay, let's say I have 4,000 people that are interested. Likely not all of those people are going to come back and enter, although we do see a pretty significant amount who sign up to our Notify Me actually go and enter a launch. But let's say you then produce, I don't know, 60 or 70% of that to actually be inventory. At least you have a good idea of demand that's going to be out there versus the amount of product inventory that you have. So it just helps make it a little bit less of a guessing game. And it's been a really useful feature for a lot of our smaller brands who just don't know where that demand sits.
Definitely, definitely. And along those lines, one of my assumptions is if you're doing a limited product launch, kind of the worst case scenario is you have inventory left over at the end of the campaign. Is that a good way of looking at it? Like better maybe to err on the side of underserve the market a little bit rather than overserve in this case?
Yeah, I think definitely with limited edition launches, you don't want that special product ending up on store shelves or especially in a landfill somewhere. So erring a little bit more on the side of exclusivity is always a good way to go about it. Although I will say there are things that you can do if you have products left over. Let's say you overshoot your demand. A lot of times we've seen brands sort of run cool secondary launch moments. So if you have an in-store or if you have a brick and mortar store presence, for example, you can do an in-person launch where you have the product on site. People can come and enter for the remaining product inventory. You prioritize the locals based on their shipping address. EQL can help with that. And that creates an additional sort of launch moment that maybe you wouldn't have if you had not had product left over. Additional opportunities for connection. So of course you want to sell through. I think that is always sort of the driver when you're going to launch a product, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. There are lots of things you can do to sort of carry the momentum of your launch on with that additional inventory.
Let's build upon that because that strikes me as such a cool opportunity. As you said, if you kind of overshoot demand a little bit. So let's say we'll stick with the teapot example. I decide initially I'm going to release 1,000 of my teapots and there's 200 left over at the very end. Maybe I'm located in a couple different stores across the country. How should I go about approaching that with trying to sell those leftover 200 units for that in-person event?
Letting your fans know, hey, we have some additional, let's say the launch closes and the launch is finished and winners are notified that they got the teapot. There might have been some of your fans that missed that initial moment or didn't see the post or didn't see the launch. In that case, just creating an entirely new campaign of, hey, we actually have some additional units. We're going to be prioritizing our local customers for these remaining units. Then setting up some sort of in-person activation at your store, whether it's actually showcasing the limited edition teapot or maybe it's just a poster with a photo. A lot of our customers will do just like QR codes in person at the store that customers can scan, enter for their teapot. And then that way you're generating that additional interest or entries for your inventory. You can leave that launch open a little bit longer, maybe try to get as many entries as possible. In the case that you want to do locals only and you're working with a tool like EQL, we can make sure that people within that store's general area are prioritized or upweighted to be selected for the product. So we've seen some success in generating local love that way, which is really nice for brick and mortar retailers who want to build up their local community. And it's just a nice way to connect with those fans and make them feel important and prioritized.
I'd love to speak to maybe some of the common mistakes that you see. Let's say you're working with a brand. They have never done a limited product launch before. They're working with EQL to at least help out with certain portions of the process. Maybe industry agnostic, are there certain mistakes that you'll see brands make really often that maybe are actually really straightforward to overcome, but just are almost tacit knowledge that comes with working in the space?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of experienced brands. I'll say many of the brands that come to EQL are pretty experienced or knowledgeable in the launch space, but we do have a lot of brands who aren't as well. I think one of the bigger mistakes, if you can call it a mistake, is just not making the most of the moment. A lot of times it's focused on just the drop, right? The moment the thing goes live. And then as soon as the launch is closed, it's sort of just over. And I think that you're missing a lot of the energy and the passion that you could be cultivating if you're only focused on the moment of sale. There's a lot you can do pre-launch to try to reach new audiences and generate buzz for your product. There's a lot you can do when the launch is open to do the same. And then there's things that you can do after the launch to really maximize the moment as well. For example, at EQL, again, we have like a post-entry sale option. And a lot of brands will put a complementary product that is showcased after the person submits their entry so that you can just go and start to get them browsing your regular e-com site. And we've seen it really successful. So putting thought into that, for example, into the post-sales moment, you're focused on the sale of this product. What else can you do with these eyeballs to really drive forward your regular strategy? So we'll see brands that are so focused on the drop moment, and we get it. It's a huge moment, but there's so many things before and after that you can do that Equal can help with that just really help you meet the full goal of your launch, which is really to get more customers.
I want to put myself in the seat of the skeptic here and hit you with the question. Let's say for the listeners that are tuning in and saying, hey, limited product launch, it sounds like an interesting idea, but it sounds like it's a really big investment to put in to create this new product, have limited number of units, limited number of sales, spend all this time promoting this limited time product, and then get that limited number of sales that are coming in from it. How would you respond to, let's say, that listener that is a little skeptical of it being a good marketing move?
I mean, I love a skeptic. I get it. I think it's something you have to decide, right? It's not going to be for everybody. If you have a really successful just e-com D2C strategy and you want to stick with that, that's fully okay. But if you are a brand who's looking for ways to just reach new audiences or expand your fan base, launches are a great way to do that. One of the things that we talk about for brands who might be like, for example, doing a first come, first serve type of launch on their website, or maybe they're doing a queue. This doesn't really help you get access to that entire new fan base with Equal because we accept every entry for a product, for example. You get to see more than who checked out. You get to see more than who was successful. You get to see the entire picture of demand around that product. And then you have an entirely new audience to connect with. Expanding the audiences, I think that's a really big one. And then it's also like the post-sales moment. For a lot of our brands, they look past the sale of the actual product that they're launching and trying to find ways that that sale can generate other sales. We had, for example, a football retailer, football in Australia. So soccer for our US people. We had a retailer and they were selling a limited edition boot. And this player who designed this boot was moving to a new team. And they capitalized on that moment to then put a secondary sales moment to sell the jersey for the new team that he was going to. I think it's a really smart move to do a complementary product that you're highlighting after your product launch. This fan is engaged. They're obviously excited about the product that you're launching. Putting some additional products in front of them that maybe aren't as high heat, but they could still be interested in or passionate about is a really smart move to generate sales past what you're actually launching. And then there's this moment of connection with a fan where, say they've won your product, they've been selected in your launch. It's a great connection moment with that fan, and they feel excited and they feel energized by your product. And I don't have solid data in my mind right now, but there is studies that show that that moment really carries over to connect that fan to your brand in a positive way and increase customer lifetime value. So I think there's ROI way past the products that you're actually selling in your launch. And the more you do it, the more you connect with these fans, the more that you're able to tell these special stories and have these special moments, you're going to see that sort of just compound over time.
So along those lines, I'm summarizing a much more intelligent breakdown that you shared, but it sounds like, A, it's this really unique ability to build a really meaningful conversation with your existing fan base, B, potentially an opportunity to learn more about who are some of the people that maybe normally explore your site, but don't or haven't made a purchase in the past so that you can market to them in the future. And then just huge brand awareness, opportunity for them to share it with their following on top of the direct sales you're going to get for it. Let's say outside, or maybe even including the direct sales, what are some of the tangible metrics that I could be tracking to just assess like, hey, was this a successful launch campaign? Or is it something that, hey, maybe I need to revisit where it didn't go according to plan?
There's a couple metrics that I think you can look at. One, so when you run a launch with Equal, for example, we allow people to opt into your marketing list. So seeing how many new fans you're able to reach or able to market to them through that launch is a great metric. I think seeing the after effects of your launch, so looking at your site traffic, seeing how that increased, looking at your social following, seeing how that increased, some of those just general brand awareness metrics that you can look at and see growth is a great thing to measure. And then I think also, of course, sell-through is important, but those post-secondary sales moments are just as important. So looking at how this launch moment affected sales for other products on your site, those are all really great things to look at to, I guess, measure success for your launch.
And I think that the last thing I wanted to get into today is what tools do you recommend for brands that do want to do this product drop?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm going to say EQL. So EQL is a great partner for, like I said, maximizing the entire launch process from beginning to end. I think another good one is Mention for just seeing what sort of conversations were happening online around your launch, around your product, learning from that, seeing what the fans are saying, and then applying it to your next launch is a great thing to have. So Mention or any other social listening tool is important. Those are probably the two you can start with. I know that that's pretty simple and straightforward. You should have a regular e-com site as well. A lot of our customers work with Shopify, but of course there's many others out there to drive those post-secondary sales moments too, but pretty simple stack.
I was going to say simple is always a good thing when it comes to tools. Whenever you could say, hey, you don't need to spend a ton of money to get all these different tools that you're working with, it's a huge upgrade.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. Audrey, this has been so fun today. For listeners that either A, want to get in touch with you, want to learn more about EQL, or just want to learn more about limited product launches, maybe we'll start out. Are there any resources you can recommend to them to just learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a checklist. It's called The Art of the Launch, and it really walks you through the main things that you need to think about when you're starting your launch strategy, from all the way from storytelling through to communication around your launch to what you need to consider as far as technology goes. I think it's a great resource for anyone who's looking to sort of step into this strategy. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that.
We'll share a link in the show notes. Within that, what's the best way for listeners to follow you so that they can learn more just about what you're putting out?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of the cool things that EQL is doing there, just Audrey Fairbrother, and follow EQL on LinkedIn. We obviously share a lot about the launches that we're running, but we share a lot of education around launches and launch strategy and what to do and what not to do. It's a great place to learn from us, but also from brands that we work with who have been doing this forever and are very successful in it.
Well, Audrey Fairbrother, coming from EQL, the content marketing manager over there. Audrey, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.